thank you so much for being here with us. Hold on, let me click the actual go live button. I didn't realize there would be another screen to load for this go live on my Facebook. So hold on for 1 second while this gets loaded and going live over there too.
Ooh, meeting is now streaming live on Facebook.
Yeah, it's live. I can see it.
Okay.
Ooh, where are you seeing it? I'm not seeing it. Oh, I'll get there.
On our page.
So thank you everybody for attending our Lavender Caucus Town Hall with our vice presidential candidates, Angela Walker and Darlene Elias. We're going to be taking a series of questions from our caucus members, which we've already solicited, and we have them already numbered here. And Cathi and I are going to take turns asking the vice presidential candidates and give them a few minutes each to give their answers. And we have an hour tonight, so hopefully we'll be able to get through all of our questions. We have 6 of them to ask. And if there's time at the end, we're happy to take questions from the caucus members who are participating here tonight, and just a kind of a free form with the VP candidates if they are willing and able. So thank you, Darlene and Angela, for being here. This is our first vice presidential candidate town hall, and so please pardon our growing pains as we go forward with this. So I would like to get started tonight by asking Cathi if you would like to take the first question. And well, before we get to the questions, I suppose let's have a moment for each candidate. Let's say 2 minutes to talk about yourselves, to tell us who you are, and all that kind of good stuff like that. Give us your pitch, I guess, it's the thing I want to say here. So perhaps we can start with Darlene and go to Angela for this one.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Lavender Caucus, for organizing this event. Again, my name is Darlene Elias, and I'm a Green Party member, and I've been with the party since 2011. And I often share my story about how it is that I came about to be in the Green Party, and it was through social activism. At that time, I was working to fight against the demolition of an apartment complex that I grew up in Holyoke, and I did a lot of organizing, including soliciting help from groups, political groups, and community organizations, and the Green Party was one of them. And I've been around ever since, and I'm proud enough to say that we were very successful in helping to prevent the demolition of the apartment complex. And right now it's in its second phase of redevelopment. I am a very strong advocate as far as social justice issues. I am an activist by heart and by nature, and I like to be a voice for the voiceless. And I like to speak out on behalf in particular of the Latino community where I live, Holyoke, Massachusetts, where more than 50% of the population here is Latino. But I also do things such as, work for the rights of housing, education, racial discrimination issues. I've done BLM activities in my area. And I also do mediation throughout my profession right now. I have a degree from Springfield College, a master's in social work degree, and I also have a political science degree, and I want to use my skill set. I've also occupied several roles within the Green Party as a national co-chair, as a Green Party co-chair, Latinx, Women's Caucus, and so forth. I am really pushing hard to, help with the profile of the Green Party in elevating us and, pushing to the left. We are the only party of the left. And I want people to understand that the Green Party is the party that is progressive, that the Republicans and Democrats are not that party. They are corrupt, and we are fighting corruption. And the way we're going to do that is by bringing about systems change. With that being said, I also want to welcome Angela Walker to the Green Party, because my understanding is that she just became a Green recently. And so I'm hoping that, you know, she gets motivated and you do what you can to help build the party, because this is really what it's about as vice president, as a the VPICs and candidates, is to help build the party for the long run, because you know, we need that party that is going to be about the people and represent the needs of the people. We need to fight for them and not corporations. And we got to think about things such as the environment, you know, equity. Look at what's happening right now with you know, the upheaval and the protests, and, you know, rightfully so. These are all issues that need to be dealt with. COVID-19 and the lack of response by the current administration. It's just not working. The system is not working. And that's why I jumped on board, is because I want to help change the system.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Darlene. That was a very comprehensive explanation of where you are and where the campaign is. Angela, if we could hear your stump speech, I suppose, that would be great.
Absolutely. First off, thank you all for having me. Being queer myself, this is a caucus that's a little close to my heart. I am originally from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I was the legislative director for the Amalgamated Transit Union Local 998 for 2, well, no, it was actually 3-4 years, and involved in the Wisconsin uprising at that time. The actions of Local 998 were very noticeable to the national union and helped ATU's national jump into the Occupy movement. I think we were one of the first unions, labor unions, to endorse the Occupy movement. So I did work with the Occupy movement for Wisconsin, and also Occupy the Hood, which focused particularly on Black and brown issues and, you know, dealing with the redlining. Because anyone who knows anything about Milwaukee knows that we are one of the most segregated cities in the country. And there's a lot of, yes, we are. And there's a lot of serious issues that manifest themselves in crime and things like that. We've got, you know, generational oppressions happening. And so in 2014, I ran as an independent socialist against then Sheriff David Clark. And if anyone knows who David, yeah, he's interesting. And that's all I'm gonna say about that. But we pulled 20% of the vote, which shocked us and caught the attention of the Socialist Party of the USA. And I am new to the Greens, but not new to this game. And I've been what I call an Assata Shakur, Fred Hampton socialist most of my life. My family practiced socialism without calling it socialism. So this is something that I'm very, very familiar with. And we discussed a red-green alliance back in either 2014 or 2016. And it just seemed like a natural fit. So being part of the Socialist Party and then working with the Green Party, it just made sense. And so we ran, the sheriff campaign got the attention of Mimi Soltzik, who is all the way across the country and, you know, with the Socialist Party. And he approached me about being the vice president for him. And I looked at him like he was crazy. And I sat on it for a while and I agreed to it, because I mean, who's going to push the issues that we're going to push in the way that we're going to push them? This is not things that mainstream candidates talk about. And so we did that, and I vowed to never, ever, ever have anything to do with politics again. I was done. I have a history of organizing. I've done labor organizing. I've done community organizing. I did some work in Brooklyn, as a matter of fact, in 2015, where we were helping people organize around gentrification, and came in and kind of helped make the road do that work. So yeah, and I am here in South Carolina driving a truck, trying to keep a low profile. And I got a phone call one day that I thought was, you know, because Howie and I have had discussions, we've been on panels. I think he's like a really dope person. I love his platform. I've always liked the things that he talks about. Like I said, it's a natural fit with what I believe. And I figured, hey, you just want an endorsement. This came up. And so when I was asked to be his vice president, I had to sit with it. I vowed no politics. And then I thought, we are at a place historically. This is not a time like any other time. And so how could I say no to this at this time and live with myself? So here I am.
Thank you very much, Angela. We do appreciate it. Okay, thank you, candidates. That will allow us to move on to our question and answer session. So if you're joining us on the Facebook stream, thanks for being here with us. We are taking questions not from Facebook, but we have solicited them from our caucus members already. And Cathi, here to my right, I think for you to your left, but stage right, we'll be taking the first question, then I'll be going second, and we'll just go back and forth, and we'll take turns asking the different candidates so they get a chance to go first. And each candidate will have about 5 minutes to give a reply to each question that we have. So thank you very much for being here. And Cathi, let us start with our question and answer session. Take it away.
It was great to get all these good questions, and we have some really good ones from our caucus members. And the first one, our fellow co-chair Margaret Elisabeth would like to know, how will you use your position as the VP of the campaign to advance the cause of queer liberation? And I guess Angela should go with this one, and we'll just go back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
I think that a big part of it is representation matters. And I think that the fact that I have always been open about being queer is helpful. I think that it helps raise visibility, but I also understand that we as a community need a lot more than visibility. We need visibility, but we also need protection. We need those protections codified into law. And so we need people to see us, but also to understand that we're part of your family. We're part of your friends. When you're talking about those people, you're talking about me. And I've had to interject into people's, conversations because I'm cisgender. I appear straight to people. You won't know I'm queer unless you ask me. And so there's a level of privilege that comes with that. And you have to let people know when you're going in on people who are those people and you're othering queer people, if you have respect for me, I'm one of those people you're talking about. So let's have that conversation. And also, as far as a party, making sure that people who are along the LGBTQIA spectrum are welcome in our party, are accepted in our party. We're not asking people to leave pieces of themselves and their identities behind to be here, to bring their whole selves to this work. Yeah. And I think that that's crucially important. So, I have no problem as a candidate being upfront with people. I am queer. I have a Pride Town Hall coming up this month, June. But there's a Pride Town Hall coming up where it's not just necessarily us celebrate, bringing up policies and bringing up the fact that we need the Equality Act passed. We need legal protections for our folks, in public spaces, public places. We need to also be lifting up the intersections of race and sexuality, or race and gender. All of those places where being queer intersects with all of these other things in the way that we are moving around in the world around those things. And making sure that the stuff that we're advocating as a party and for us as a campaign is that we're being holistic in the way that we're approaching it. And so that, people are not looking for themselves yeah, this is great, but what do you have for, I'm queer, where do I fit in this? Making sure they don't have to ask that question, that this is for you. This is something that is explicit about protecting queer folks, and that this is a campaign that is very explicit about, showing up for the queer community. So I guess in a nutshell, raising visibility for us. I mean, I got over my shyness about saying that I was queer in public years ago. I could care less what anybody has to say about it now. They'll be all right. And if they're not, that's all right too. But raising our visibility and letting people know there's an openly queer candidate, and also that queer issues are human rights issues, and we need to be lifting those up and making sure that we're paying good attention to them. And specifically things that are around, you know, the special oppressions that queer people face. Queer and trans, excuse me. So.
Well, that's a pretty good answer. What do you got for us there, Darlene?
How's it going, Cathi? So, you know, the first thing that I would do is I would make sure that as a party, we are upholding our platform all of the time. A part of the problem that we're having within the Green Party is, you know, we have a lot of transphobia that's going on. And to the public and the larger community or society, they're getting this idea that the Green Party is transphobic, and we're not, right? There's just a really small group of people within the Green Party that are perpetuating that message, right? So we need to make sure that we are holding up that flag, right? And saying, listen, you know, this is the home of queers, okay? And, you know, of the gay community. And that is so important. And if we're not taking care of that, you know, within our own party, right? And we're not cleaning house within our own party and reinforcing that, we're not going to be credible out there in society. That's one. Two, I would be the kind of individual VP candidate that I would bring on liaisons, right, from the LGBT community. I'd have advisors on hand to consult with on all of these issues, because I'll acknowledge I don't know it all, right? And I need to be very sensitive and very considerate of these issues. That's one. Two, I would be doing some campaign movements around LGBT issues. One of the things that I think that the Green Party is very lacking in is when it comes to politics and campaigning around movement building, right? And I would love to see a movement around LGBT rights, right? And uplifting that and reinforcing the idea that trans are women, right? Because that seems to be the main issue within our party, I think. Also, this idea of, I think we need to promote this idea of having autonomy over our own bodies, right? And respecting individuality, right? I am really against people dictating to others what they want to do with their own bodies and what spaces they should occupy. I think that this really needs to be considered on a humane level, right? This is about humanity. And when I say that, when I describe myself as a trans feminist, what I mean by that is that it doesn't bother me. I don't feel threatened at all by trans women, right? In fact, I feel that they enrich me as an individual. And if I am secure within myself, right, as a person, right, there's no reason for me to feel threatened at all. My rights are not being infringed on, right? I am going to continue to fulfill my needs and my goals, right? It's not dependent on anybody else, so to speak. And so these are the kind of messages I think that need to be brought forth in our party, because, you know, this issue in particular, as you are aware, is dividing the party quite a bit, and it's quite problematic. And what I would do is I would stand up to these individuals as a VP candidate. I have already. I know that at one point when it was announced that I was the VP pick, I had people reaching out to me and asking me to come up with a statement against the Lavender Caucus. And I chose not to do that, right? So you need to not just talk the talk, you need to walk the walk. If you believe in queer liberation and homosexuality and gay rights and all of that, then you need to walk the walk and you need to demonstrate that. And the first thing that you do is you fight back.
Excellent. So that's pretty good. Do you have the list of questions, Dahlia, so you can take the next one?
I sure do. So thank you both for your answers. That was very good. Our next question comes from caucus member Thomas Levitt. And Thomas wants to know, as a caucus, our mission is to green the queers and queer the greens. What do you feel that you can contribute to that cause in your role as a vice presidential candidate for your campaign and the Green Party? And let's start with Darlene this time, please.
Can you repeat that a minute, please?
Absolutely.
Repeat the question. Thank you.
So, as a caucus, our mission is to green the queers and queer the greens. What do you feel that you can contribute to that cause in your role as a vice presidential candidate for your campaign and the Green Party?
I think that's a really catchy phrase, actually. I don't know who made it up, but that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about in regards to you know, campaigning and movement building and, you know, uplifting our image as a party. One of the first things that I would do is I would consider intersectionality. I think that is really, really important. We need to do coalition building. You know, we're much powerful together when we're united. And I think that it would be really important to make other movements understand how much or how important it would be if we came at some of these progressive issues together instead of constantly being divided, right? And so I think that that's part of, you know, greening the queers, as you say. And you know, when we talk about intersectionality, understanding that environmental issues are just as important to, you know, the homosexual community and the gay community. So to me, those are really important things. Like everybody's impacted by housing issues. Everybody's impacted by quality of life issues. Everybody's impacted by discrimination issues. Everybody's impacted by, you know, debt issues. There are so many things, medical issues, medical needs, Medicare for all. You know, this is not just an issue for the straight community, so to speak, right? These are issues that are just important to the queer community. And so we have to go out there and present that these are intersectional issues that are just important to everybody in the Green Party, and that it benefits all of us to come together as one on these issues. You know, I think that one of the concerns that I have in particular is violence when it comes to the queer community. I know that in Puerto Rico in particular, there's been a lot of violence with the trans community there and with people being killed, actually. And I think that that message, you know, as Angela said, that trans rights are human rights, needs to be brought to a global community, right? It doesn't matter where we're at. And I know with the Puerto Rican community and the male community, sometimes we deal with some serious male chauvinist issues and some, you know, serious discrimination. And so when I talk about campaign building and movement building in the trans community, not only here, I also see that in a global perspective because it's happening everywhere. You know, people are not able to come out. People are not able to be who they are, so to speak, and feel comfortable in their skin. People are not able to, you know, go to health centers and to seek help. People are not able to, you know, go to certain institutions to get an education. And so for me, that is just as important. You know, in an ecological perspective, we need to go and tackle these issues all across the world globally. And we have to be the leaders in that. We need to model behavior. And so that to me is you know, in a nutshell, we need to embrace people and how do I say, empower them to have choices. And so that message has to be taken everywhere. It doesn't matter where.
Thank you very much, Darlene. So Angela, if you'd like me to repeat the question, I'm more than happy to. Otherwise, you can go for it.
No, y'all were good enough to put it in the chat. So, I've been looking at it and, reflecting on it. And I think a lot of what Darlene said about intersectionality was what I was going to say. Is like, making sure that when we are talking about issues, I don't think you don't have to work hard to make people have the connection between human rights and standing up for human rights and also standing up for the rights of the planet and the non-human life on this planet. I think that for people who are sensitive to those things, which many in our communities are, I think that there's a natural synergy there, that you don't really have to work hard to do that. I mean, I'm and I'm also thinking about the organizing work that I've done. Most of the people in my own inner circle are organizers and activists. And I think out of all of them, I've got one of them is straight, only one. And so like thinking about the work that we were doing with Occupy the Hood, think about what Darlene just said about, the spaces where you have these cis male, cis hetero normative spaces that are super patriarchal. And it's just like, excuse me, this is how we're doing this over here. These are the people that you're not thinking about because you can kind of gloss over them. Well, that's us. So we're here. What you gonna do with this problem?
Right.
And getting in their faces about me. We were very confrontational. It was really dope. But and just making sure that those issues are always at the forefront. It's like when you are talking about human rights, we're not just talking about cis het people. We're not just talking about, just like when we're, lifting up race and lifting up gender and lifting up all of those things, we are talking about bringing the whole self in. And so, yeah, this whole thing, I think that, any approach that we have to community building and lifting up these issues, we have got intersectionality is at the core of it. It is essential to it. And I think that we will draw people to the party and make them feel welcome here because they see themselves here. And I think that that's happening. And I just wrote a piece about the police a year ago, May 24th, a year ago, police in Kansas City attacked a trans woman named Breonna Hill. And she was subsequently murdered, not by the police, but through intra-community violence. And the troubling thing is that, there's an epidemic of trans women of color in this country being disappeared. And we're not talking about it because they're trans women of color. Mm-hmm. And so it's important, if you have a platform like this, we need to be talking about that. We need to be putting it in people's face. We need to be writing about it. We need to be lifting that up. We have a problem. Yeah. And at this point, it's not acceptable. And it's not something we're going to be silent about. And people have to understand that. It's all of us or it's none of us. I mean, if we're not all, if not, like we used to say in the spaces with Occupy and things like that, if you are not working for the liberation of all of our people, you're not working for the liberation of any. And so to have a platform like this, I think it's our duty to make sure that the people who are not being heard, who are not normally in these spaces, that they're in the spaces.
Right.
Thank you very much. That was a good answer. I appreciate both of your time for taking that answer and taking that question very seriously and providing really in-depth answers from both campaigns. Thank you. Cathi, would you like to take the next question, please?
Sure. We have another question from another caucus member. Gerardo Hernandez would like to know, please name one position you would be willing to compromise on in order to get something greater done. And tag team it Go Angela.
I think I saw that in the chat or something related to it, and I'm thinking, what would I be willing to compromise on? And that's difficult because there's not a lot of things, particularly being from marginalized communities, we're not in a position to be making compromises. That's not, I mean, it's, you know, what am I asking people to not bring of themselves into this work? What am I telling you that it's okay to dance with the devil about? I'm not okay with that. I'm sorry. I mean, there are certain things, you know, in order to get the greater good accomplished, I think that being a person who is running for VP on a third party ticket is pretty uncompromising.
That's right, Angela. You go, girl.
I think it's pretty uncompromising. I think that, you know, you've basically drawn the line in the sand and said,
Absolutely.
I'm not compromising. And so if you're bold enough to take a stance like that, and I'm just thinking of those of us who are, you know, running in these positions, if you're bold enough to stand on that and say, I'm not compromising, I'm not willing to sell pieces of my community out or tell you, okay, you should accept this in order to accomplish this. That's not why we're third party. We're not here to compromise. Bernie was our compromise. We are not here to compromise. That's not what we came here for. And so, you know, respectfully, honestly, I cannot think of any issue that would come before me, that is coming before me, that I am willing to take less than what I'm asking for on. Sorry.
Good answer, Angela. All right, Darlene.
I have to say, I really like that answer, Angela. You know, I remember going down with a friend of mine to the Women's March, and she's a Democrat, and you know, but we know each other from community organizing and activism. And, you know, one of the questions that she always asked me was, why the Green Party, right? And my question was, why not, right? And, you know, I'm constantly battling that question of, that Geraldo says about compromising. You know, some of the things that people tell me is, well, you know, you're compromising your chances at being successful within the party. You know, you're compromising your chances at being elected by running green. And I've run green twice, for example, as a city councilor in my city. And the thing that I'm not willing to do is compromise my values, right? I am a person with integrity. I am a person that allows myself to be, what dictates me and my barometer is my morality, so to speak. And that's why the Green Party platform is so appealing to me, is because, you know, we don't take any money. We don't take, you know, how do I say, money from special interests, from PACs, so to speak. You know, I don't think that people realize the real influence that exists with the Democrats and the Republicans behind the scenes with, you know, big corporations and donations and dark money. I don't think that the average person understands that, right? And I am not going to allow myself to be influenced by that, and I need to be able to sleep well at night. I do understand that these corporations are having such an influence and such a detriment that the future of our world right now is at risk, right? The environment, climate change, you know, the future of my grandchildren and my children, existence on this world as it is. And do I want to compromise on that? Absolutely not, right? And it's only when we're pushing on a left platform progressive agenda, right, that it's when the system, the political system, feels some sort of pressure, right, to kind of compromise with us, to kind of negotiate with us on what our issues are. But if we don't continue to push, right, then the corporations and these political interests, this dark money behind the scenes, these players behind the scenes are going to continue to get their way. And so that to me is, you know, really key and very important. I think that one of the reasons we have such a difficult time in being successful with our campaigns is the fact that we stay steadfast and true to that value of not being influenced by money, and we're not corrupt, and that to me is extremely important. So if it weren't for that, then if it wasn't for that as a Green Party, I probably would be looking to start a party or to go to another progressive party, because that to me is really key and very important.
Thank you, Darlene.
You're welcome.
You're up, Margaret. I mean,
All right,
go
thanks,
for it.
Kathy. So this question is from caucus member Chanel Pittman, and it's similar to the one we just asked, except Chanel's question is, what's the one policy position that you're unwilling to water down? And that's a kind of a broad question, so give yourself just a moment to think about that, and we'll start with Darlene. And Darlene, what do you think?
Oh my God, that's kind of like a really difficult thing, to be honest with you. I'm gonna have to say, in light of what's going on right now with the riots and with the death of George Floyd, I am really not willing to compromise on issues of race. I really think that racism is a real big issue here in the United States. You know, for me, again, this issue of intersectionality, right? Race and LGBT rights and trans rights are really, really important. And if we don't come together and support, you know, the African American community and the Latino community with these murders and these killings and these slayings of Black people, defenseless people at that, we're never going to see progress in this country. This country was founded on hate. And even though some people would like to say that there's been progress, there really hasn't been much progress. It's just more subtle. It's in the sense of like dog whistle politics, right? But then you have these incidences like what happened with George Floyd, that really highlights and brings everything out. I liked this thing that I read the other day about, you know, racism has always been a problem. That's not new. The issue that's new now is that it's actually being recorded, right? And so, again, we have to come together around this issue. And I'm not going to sit here in a righteous way and judge people for what's going on and the reactions that they're having in the community, you know, with the protests. I think that people's voices are not being heard at this moment. And, you know, when people are being hunted down in the community and they don't have the right to fulfill their lives in a very meaningful way, that to me is extremely problematic. And so that's something that I'm not willing to compromise on.
Thank you very much. That was a great answer, Darlene. Angela, would you like to go ahead and take the question, or would you like me to repeat? I know it's in the chat.
Yeah, it's in the chat. And
Okay.
I appreciate you saying, you know, take a couple of minutes and just kind of, you know, sit with it. And thinking of policy positions that I would be unwilling to water down, I am about human rights, period. Human rights. I am about the rights of all of the people that, particularly oppressed people, but human rights and the environmental piece that is the Green Party is something that I've always appreciated, because I honestly feel that you cannot talk about the exploitation and degradation of human beings under capitalism if you are not linking it to the exploitation and degradation of this planet, and the idea that this planet is a commodity put here for people to use and abuse, which I think correlates to the way that people are handled, that it's okay to marginalize people that because they're not like you, or they don't think like you, or they don't look like you. I think those things are interrelated. And so one of the, the things that I would be absolutely, that I am unwilling to back down on or water down because, oh, gee, I don't want it to, I don't want to offend. It is what it is. We need to be very vocal about standing up for human rights and very vocal about standing up for the life of this planet, because those two things are interrelated. We do not exist if we do not have a planet. And and I have grandchildren. I have 5 of them. I want them healthy. I want them to live in a world that has penguins and polar bears and all the things I grew up with, bunny rabbits, whatever. I want them to have those things. I don't want those things to be extinct. Climate grief is very real. And watching species go extinct in my own lifetime is heartbreaking. And so thinking about the linkages, like, stop hurting my people. What's happening, the uprising that is happening in Minnesota right now. I got friends on the ground there. And I have been a part of those uprisings. And it is, people, is very easy if people are not involved with it to stand back and say, oh, well, y'all could have handled it better. But factor in a very human rage, a very human grief, a very human, it goes deep. And I just wrote an open letter, about that we put out on our campaign website yesterday. And so I'm not going to back down. I'm not going to water down what we're asking as far as human rights. I'm not going to back down or water down what we're asking for as far as the rights of the planet. There is a lot of urgency around both of those things. And honestly, we can't afford to back down or water them down, especially not now.
Thank you very much. That was a great answer. I really appreciate that. So this takes us on to our next question. Cathi, would you like to take this, please?
Yeah, I am going to, I have a choice of 2 questions here, and I think I'm going to ask this question from our co-chair, Margaret Elisabeth, who says, can you cite an example of when you have compromised, and can you give us an example of something that you wouldn't compromise on? I think we're on the same kind of theme here, but we're trying to get to the point of cite an example of compromise and something that you wouldn't compromise. So both sides of the equation.
Sounds like a very similar question to Geraldo's question.
Right. Well, go for it, Darlene. What do you think?
As I stated before, I'm not going to compromise on issues of race. I have this colleague from work. We both do union-related work at the job. And one of the issues, again, that we see all the time is issues of racism and discrimination at work. I have been a union steward, or was a union steward for many, many years, several years in the workplace. And, in a place that is known to oppress people on multi-levels. And I've seen that oppression, and I've seen it firsthand, and not only as a woman of color, and as a Latina, and living in a community that's over 50% Hispanic, and yet we still don't have a Puerto Rican mayor. The majority of the people in my city are Puerto Rican. Just seeing people suffering because they don't have equal opportunities. To me, the trauma and the pain that comes with that is really a big issue. So no, I'm going to continue to say that I'm going to be a strong advocate, right, for people of color and equality across the board. Where I have compromised that in my life, or politically speaking, I have to say to you that I am very well known in the community not compromising. One of the reasons why I've been very effective at mobilizing in my community, and when there's really, really big issues in my community, I'm one of the individuals that are sought out to highlight some of these issues, or to organize or mobilize around these issues. And so I'd have to say, when it comes to social justice issues, I think that it's really hard to come up with that. I've often have put myself on the line, including in my workplace, you know, my own livelihood, because I have had an inability to compromise on issues. And when you're someone who has a trajectory, right, of with high integrity, right, and you want to make a difference in the world in a good way, that's not something that you're willing to do. And so that is really a difficult, I think, question for me. I have not seen myself doing that in my personal or political life, because I've always worked hard to live a life that, how do I say, I've worked hard to be a good person in my life.
Thank you, Darlene. What do you think? What do you think, Angela? Do you have something that you can give us an example of you have compromised and wouldn't compromise?
Oh, yes. I voted for Bernie Sanders in the South Carolina primary. That was my compromise.
Wow.
I did. And I, you know, for reasons of whatever, I mean, he was on the ballot and he was there, but I did. I voted for Sanders. That was my compromise. And when we're talking about what I will not compromise on, is pretty much what I've already said. I am not willing to backpedal on my position of rights for folks in the LGBTQIA community. I am not willing to sell out my trans sisters and my trans brothers, my trans siblings. I'm not willing to say that it is okay to continue to marginalize people in the name of political expediency. I'm not here for that. And I think that one of the things that is happening with the COVID pandemic is the fact that all of the inequalities people have been trying to tell themselves are not really that bad, or this is something we can live with, or, you know, we've just muddled through. The stuff is on display now in a really horrible way. And it's like, you're having to look at yourself and ask yourself, I lived with this? I sat back and I, you know, soft pedaled and said, you know, maybe I can, you know, wiggle because the big greater good. No more. I'm not doing this. And I mean, you know, as far as like the organizing work I've done, I was very clear on what I wasn't compromising about. And it's like, one of the nice things about being somebody who is not establishment is that you can basically tell people, shove it. You don't like it? Kick rocks, keep it pushing. What you gonna do to me? Get mad? It's not like anybody's paying me off. I'm a socialist. What you gonna do? Get mad? You'll be all right. And so, you know, I've always used that as my leverage to basically say whatever it was I wanted to say. And people who expect it. And one of the things that I think that the people who rock with me and work with me and organize with me that has kept us together is that we're very upfront with each other and upfront with the people that we're working with. You know what you're getting here. I'm not gonna pull any punches. It's like, if you don't like it, then you don't like it, but I'm gonna say it. And, you know, you're not, even in circles that, you know, people that I'm not necessarily intimately related with, but that are acquaintances or people I get along with, you know, there's certain things you don't say around me because we're gonna have that talk. So I'm not popular at parties. It's really okay. But I mean, y'all know what it's like. People don't want to talk to you. It's like, oh hell, here she comes. So yeah, it's like you talking smack about trans people, you talking smack about queer people, we gonna have that discussion. You're not gonna like it. You'll be okay. So I think that, you know, part of the nice thing about being not establishment is you can basically say what you want. So why not do it?
Excellent. Thank you, Angela. You got the next question, Dahlia?
I sure do. We're doing a little bit out of order, as you see, Kathy. So I think that'll work out pretty good because this is good. So the next question we have is from Colin Bartlett, our secretary. And Colin asks, today there are uprisings in multiple cities against police brutality. And just yesterday, Tony McDade was murdered by Tallahassee police before being misgendered by the media. How will your campaign, organized with queer folk of color, working to protect themselves from the police? And what sort of system of justice would you like to see that protects queers from homophobes and racists, both within and outside the state? And I think we can start with Angela on that one, and then we'll go to Darlene.
First off, I did not know that. I did not know that happened. Yeah, that's a lot. How will we organize with queer folks of color? One of the things in our campaign platform is community control of the police. And I think we are seeing that being implemented in Minneapolis with the uprising, that you have, you know, or groups of people that are policing themselves, that are clean, you know, they were doing cleanup, they were, you know, they're taking care of their own community. And I think that especially when we're considering the aggression coming from law enforcement, aggression against particularly trans women of color, we have a big problem with that. And so I'm thinking about, you know, what our campaign works, you know, what's in our campaign, you know, about community control of the police and where we stand on the rights of folks who are LGBTQIA along the spectrum. And something that Darlene mentioned earlier about making sure that the organizers that are on the ground doing this work already, we're not reinventing the wheel. The people that I want to be working in tandem with our organizers, people who have already done this, people who already know their particular community. And I think that one of the things that our platform and one of the things that our party can, you know, our campaign and our party can do is step in and say, how can we be helpful? We are not coming in here and telling you how to do this. You know how to do this. How do we work with you to get this done? This is our platform. Where do you see an intersection? And yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things that we definitely as a campaign are doing, and I think that it's necessary, is that we have to talk about there is a real problem that violence is not just being perpetuated against cis-het Black men. We have a real problem with law enforcement being horrible and murderous to trans women of color. And no one is protecting them. No one is standing up for them. This is a compromise I think the society is making because, hey, they're other. We don't have to worry. We don't have to care about them. Well, we kind of do. And so I think that one of the things with our campaign organizing with queer folks of color is like, what are you already doing? Uplifting the piece in our campaign that is around community control of policing, what public safety looks like, community owned and community controlled, and what sort of system of justice we would like to see. I really need the Equality Act passed because I think that and then there's a pending Supreme Court decision that could drop any day around Amy Stevens and whether you can be fired from your job for being trans and having that codified into law. We need protections for trans, gender nonconforming, and queer people codified into law. And I think that would be helpful because at least when people are doing the things that they're doing, it is expressly illegal. And also attaching a mandatory, this is a hate crime. If you are targeting someone because they are trans, that is a hate crime, period. You're not gonna escape with this. And so just thinking of things that need to be codified into law to protect our communities, also making sure that the communities themselves are in control of policing and working with those folks that are on the ground that are already doing that work.
Thank you very much, Angela. I appreciate that answer. It was very well thought out. Darlene, the question's in the chat, or I can repeat it for you if you'd like.
So, that question is very dense. There's so many pieces to that question, to be honest with you. And so I'm going to kind of maybe dissect it a little bit. And one of the things that I think is really important is that we really need to transform. We need to change. We need to start over. We need to have this reform with law enforcement. That is really, really an important piece. And I'm talking about law enforcement on all levels, right? I'm talking about from the point that an individual encounters the law to the point of investigations, the way they're treated, prosecutions, and so forth, and even the court system. We have to understand that the court system and the police system and all of that, that was created by the white man, right? And so it's an institutional system that we need to dismantle, deconstruct, and we need to find ways to, again, implement safety measures for people. And I know that in our platform, we, like Angela suggested, we do support community control. But sometimes, to a certain degree, I don't think that that's the only thing that we can do. I can explain, for example, in Springfield, Massachusetts, near where I live, they have a citizens review board where people continuously file complaints in regards to, excessive use of force, police brutality, or whatever the issue may be. But because the Citizen Review Board really doesn't have much leverage, there's not much that the community control. You understand, there's not much that they can do. So one of the things that I think is really important is to be able not to only have these community control boards, but to be able to do these investigations, these independent investigations, make recommendations, and then have the leverage and the ability to follow through with those recommendations. Not that it's just, this is what we would like you to see happen, or we would like to see happen as a community. The other thing too, that I think is really important is that we need to ensure, if we are going to have police departments, because many people don't agree with this model of the police, so to speak. But if we are going to have police officers, that the individuals in these police departments reflect me and you, right? That there are a lot of Latinos, Blacks, trans individuals, because we understand that we would be much more compassionate as individuals with the community, because we relate. And so there's a lot of issues of discrimination as well that come with these law enforcement systems that exist. I think that is extremely problematic, and it's something that we need to deal with as well. In regards to the uprisings and the protests, and this individual that we're talking about, the news reporter that was killed, I see that as oppression in many ways. First, excuse me, not killed, but, oppression in many ways. And these arrests that have been made. We also saw this journalist that was arrested as well, this African-American journalist. This to me is repression, right? This is censorship. They want us to take the abuse. They want us to, they want to kill our people, so to speak, and murder us and oppress us and continue to marginalize us, but they also want to censor us. right? They don't want us to speak out, which is extremely problematic. And one of the things that we need to do is we need to uplift and empower ourselves to make sure that the truth is getting out there and that we're speaking truth to power. And there's many different ways in being able to do that. And then we shouldn't punish people, right, for speaking out and exposing these abuses. We should have protections in place to do that. And as far as the LGBT community, you know, I think that education is extremely important. You know, there is this discrimination that goes on, you know, with these systems. I believe that adopting, you know, policies, you know, procedures and best practices in all of these institutions across the United States, and holding people accountable when they're violating these practices that are best practices to support people of color and the LGBT community. We have to have ways to hold people accountable for that as well. We can no longer continue to work this double standard in this community and in this society the way we do, right? That certain people are treated a certain way. For example, if you have, you know, MAGA, or you have a white individual showing up in the community with guns, there's no consequences to that behavior. But if you have African Americans or Latinos protecting themselves with guns, just showing up in the community with guns, you know what the outcome of that is going to be. And so we need to challenge those double standards that exist in our community. It doesn't matter, you know, with what marginalized population it is. And so, and again, as I stated previously, I would make sure that I would have liaisons and people that are in the forefront that represent the LGBT community and at the table helping to make those proposals and those policy changes.
Very good. Thank you, Darlene. That was a great answer. Thank you for to both candidates for fielding that question. It was a dense question. There was a lot to it. And that brings us to our final question for you both tonight. Cathi, if you would like to take that one, please.
Oh, you want to go for that one? I gave a little preview accidentally earlier, but I'll put it back out there again. It is from Thomas Levitt. He was our secretary and he's helping us out with a lot of stuff. How do you balance the desire to adhere to principle with the requirements associated with getting something tangible accomplished in the context of the present system? How do you navigate the gray area beyond red lines of principle? Can you cite an example in your work of a compromise or trade-off that was less than ideal, but still acceptable? And Angela, would you like to have a go at that one?
I'm thinking, where in my work have I compromised? I'm thinking of the work that I did with the transit union. I was their lobbyist. And so, you know, when you were talking about getting transit funding, lifting up transit issues and taking those to, you know, the State House and bringing those to, you know, senators and representatives, that's what I did. And I remember they cut us, the systems under former Governor Scott Walker took a major hit. This is not someone who believed in public transit as a public good. In Wisconsin, the issue of transit is very racialized. And anything that kicks at Milwaukee, because Milwaukee is seen as primarily Black and brown, is acceptable. And so cutting the state transportation 10%, cutting that budget was horrible. And a lot of even rural, which they didn't like to make the connections with us, but it was what it was, rural systems lost. Some of them were looking at going under. And so we wanted the reinstatement of that full 10%, and basically went hand in hand to our state capitol to ask for it. We did not get the entire 10%. What we got was the bare minimum to keep systems operating. That was a compromise. That was a trade-off versus that or nothing. It was way less than ideal. It was acceptable because that was all we could get, but it was also humiliating. It was also infuriating. Why am I begging people who are elected and whose constituents are speaking out to them, we need this service? Why is it even on the chopping block to begin with when you don't have to do that?
Right.
And so one of the things that one reason I don't believe in making compromises on things that are vital to me is it's humiliating. It's humiliating. So, you know, that's the one thing, an example of in my work of a compromise or a trade-off. Far less than ideal, acceptable because it was all we could get, but no.
I hear you talking. That's how they attack us, is by picking at those systems that everybody needs. What do you think, Darlene?
Oh, so I don't know. I'm just thinking about what I did to advocate for, you know, preventing the demolition of the housing complex. One of the things we did was filed a Massachusetts Commission Against Discrimination lawsuit to stop the housing complex from being demolished. And I remember sitting in the mayor's office with some of the tenants at that time and discussing with them, you know, kind of the circumstances and kind of mediating the situation with them. And we had decided to back off on the complaint, not dismiss it entirely, but we compromised in the sense that if the state and the city would come together to provide the money necessary to redevelop the complex, then we wouldn't move forward with the discrimination lawsuit. And even though there were people cheering us on, actually, because this was a trend, right, that was happening across the United States, where people were being displaced for a variety of reasons. And instead of demolishing and giving everybody Section 8 vouchers and subsidies, right, what they said was, is let's develop the housing stock that we do have, right, and make it better and make it a community, right, beautify the community and make it a place where people want to live and raise their families, instead of just displacing them and just, you know, giving them a Section 8 mobile certificate and letting them be on their own. And so to a certain degree, there was a compromise in the sense of, we said, okay, we're not gonna move forward with the lawsuit, but you in turn are going to help us get the resources necessary to redevelop the complex. And it was successful.
Thank you. That is the last of the official questions that we got from our caucus. And we're also pushing right up on the border of time. So I'm going to tag it back over to Dahlia and let her take it from here.
Thank you very much, Cathi. Cathi is correct. We have reached the limit of our discussion tonight, our town hall with the Lavender Caucus and the two vice presidential candidates, Angela Walker and Darlene Elias. We'd like to thank you both for taking your time to come here. We'd like to thank your campaigns for allowing you to appear here and talk with us, to answer our questions, and to give us personally a sense of who you are, what you're about, the kind of political leader and activist that you will be should you win the nomination and the campaign. Speaking for us all, I'd like to wish you both good luck in your campaigns going forward in the future. And we would happily extend an invitation to dialogue with anyone from the campaign at any point about any of the issues which we have raised tonight, or which we know are going on in the Green Party in a greater sense. So can I make a quick comment, Margaret?
just to say that our campaigns did not allow us to be here. I'm sure that's the case with Angela as well, right? We decided that we wanted to be a part of this event.
Fantastic. Okay, so thank you very much. And for those of you who joined us on Facebook during the live stream, thank you for attending tonight. Those of you who RSVP'd for our caucus, thank you for being here. And we look forward to having another debate and another town hall kind of discussion the moment we can do so. So thank you all very much and have a good night.
Thank you for inviting us.
Of course.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye, everybody.